And welcome to another edition of the Quarantine Q&A here on the Westmoreland Sports Network, where myself, Sean Myers, and my co-host Dan Flicking are talking to Westmoreland County athletic directors during this downtime during the spring sports season. Today we're talking to the seventh-year athletic director from Norwin, Brandon Rapp. Brandon, thank you for taking the time to do this. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me.
We wish it was under different circumstances that we were talking to you. We mentioned, of course, the spring season for high school athletics has been put on hold. Before we get your thoughts on that, however, 7 years at Norwin, but you're a Westmoreland County guy even going back prior to that. Let everyone know that maybe is unfamiliar about your background and resume.
Yeah, seventh year at Norwin. It's amazing how fast time flies. But had the opportunity to spend a few years prior to that at Derry School District. A lot of great people there. That it seems like it was just yesterday that I was still at Derry, and here we are 7 years later, and that eighth year at Norwin is quickly approaching. So a lot of great memories in Westmoreland County for sure.
Let's talk about the spring sports season, because it has not gone according to plan. And, of course, with everyone in quarantine and the stay-at-home orders, the spring sports season, again, being put on hold. And at higher levels, it seems like, maybe they're going to try to get some stuff going in the summer with the professional sports. But there's a lot of uncertainty at the high school level. So kind of take me through what you've been doing over the last handful of weeks, what your athletes and your coaches have been doing as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just the unknown, and that's not just in the high school athletic world, but just the world in general. The unknown of what's to come, and so I think the biggest thing is just having those plan A, plan B, and plan C in place, depending on how things go over the next few weeks or month or whatever that might be. I know our athletes, our coaches are eager to get back to some form of normalcy. They're doing what they can. Our coaches are sending workouts home and trying to stay engaged with our spring athletes. And again, we've been fortunate with a nice stretch of weather here where our outdoor athletes are able to, be outside and do some of that conditioning on their own, of course, and at home. So, I think everybody's just trying to stay active and stay as engaged as what they can, and try to stay optimistic that, as time goes on here and we hope we can get back to school soon, and then we'll see what the future might hold, for spring athletics. But, at this point, like you said, it's just that unknown.
There's a handful of spring sports and maybe some lesser publicized, boys tennis, there's track and field as well. But I think the focus for most people is softball, baseball. Your softball team has been on the rise at Norwin. It's been a pretty successful program. Baseball, especially this year, I think they were sky high in terms of the expectations. A lot of people thought that the Knights might be the front runner to win a WPIAL championship. How disappointing is it to see that team's not able to take the field to this point? And what did you anticipate from the baseball team this season?
Well, I think you're right. There were high expectations with all of our programs. And we were really excited to, I think we've had a good, 2019, 2020 year so far from an athletic standpoint. And we were excited to close that out on a high note with some of our spring athletic teams. So it's certainly disappointing to not get to see them, perform and reach what their expectations were and reach some of those goals. So, we were excited for baseball and softball. I think there was, a lot of talent, and it really would have been great to see them, have a good season. But again, with that being said, our tennis, our volleyball, track, and just, all the sports that we offer in the spring, I just really feel for those student athletes and the coaches as well. As the spring season started on March 2nd. But there's a lot of time and effort and dedication that has gone in year round. So, while a lot of people might think, we just didn't quite get off the ground, we were early on in the year. Those student athletes and those coaches have put hours and hours of training and dedication in prior to that. To see it kind of get taken away right when it was go time, right when it was time to really start competing. I just really feel for those folks, and hopefully we'll see how things play out. But it's definitely disappointing.
Brandon, as an athletic director, you're around these student athletes a lot, obviously, all the time, not only during games but at practices, and to see them, what they've done in the preseason to train, and especially the seniors to, and again, I know the PIAA continues to postpone. We hope a miracle happens and somehow, some way, we can have a spring sports season. But if it doesn't, just your thoughts personally on seeing these kids train so hard throughout the year, especially the seniors who aren't going to get this year back. Just your thoughts on kind of what is going through maybe their minds and what went through your mind. Really, to me, the biggest announcement came when the NCAA tournament was canceled and then spring sports in the NCAA were canceled. That's when it really hit me hard personally and said, oh my gosh, this is something we can't be playing around about. And then I started thinking about the seniors at the collegiate level and the high school level losing years. I know some of the seniors will get those years back, but it's not the same at the high school level. If we don't have spring sports, they go on, and some aren't playing sports in college. So just your thoughts on those seniors especially, but the kids just training so hard throughout the year and potentially losing this season altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say I'm speechless on that, but I honestly, the disappointment that I feel personally, because I see the dedication and the time and the effort that goes into that, I can't speak for what those student athletes are feeling, because I can't imagine, I don't know what it's like to be in that position. I know how bad I feel for them, and I just hope that, that their work and their dedication that they put in some form or fashion will still benefit them in the long run. So, for those seniors that may be moving on to, collegiate sports and collegiate athletics, that obviously they've become better and they'll be better prepared for that. For those student athletes that are not going to have that opportunity, as cliche as it sounds, I just hope that, the time that they spent with their friends, the time and the dedication and that preparation, that they're able to take some of those life lessons away from that and understand that this is something that's unprecedented. There's no blueprint for this, but that they are able to, still take something away from that and move on and be successful beyond, high school athletics.
You mentioned there's no blueprint, and we're highlighting the spring sports being in peril. But I really think some of the focus already is starting to shift to how the fall sports might be affected. Even if things were to, let's say, get back to normal at the end of August, there's a lot of time spent over the summer in which those athletes are working out, doing various team activities, things of that nature. So while school's not in session for most of June and July and August, there's still a lot going on athletically. What could change in that regard?
Yeah, and again, that's the unknown, and we've talked about it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Sean. That everybody's focused on spring sports because that's what we're living right now. But we talk about those spring athletes that have trained in the off season. We have our fall and our winter athletes that if they are not playing a spring sport, that their training and preparation for their upcoming seasons is also being impacted. So I don't know if there is an answer for how that may be affected or how that may be impacted. I certainly don't have that answer, but we're putting some plans in place, and we just want to make sure that when we get the green light to move forward, that we can provide the most opportunity for those student athletes to get back to normalcy and be as well prepared as what they can be for their upcoming seasons as well.
One of the fall sports that everyone seems to get excited for across western Pennsylvania and here in Westmoreland County is football. And the Knights the last couple of years have been outside the playoff picture. I know that has to be disappointing, but it is even more disappointing when you have a terrific quarterback, one of the best in Westmoreland County in recent memory, in Jack Salopek, who doesn't get that opportunity his last couple of years to play in a playoff game.
Yeah, certainly our goal and Coach Brzezinski's goal with football is to always qualify for the WPIAL playoffs and compete for WPIAL championships. So, certainly it's been disappointing not to achieve that the last couple of years, but that's also not to take away from the effort and the accomplishments that those couple of teams have had, and all of our fall sports teams have had. So Jack's going to have a great college football career. I'm excited to continue to follow him and all of our other student athletes that'll move on. But sometimes things don't go your way. But I couldn't be prouder for the way that those teams have competed and continued to improve over the last couple of years. And Jack's going to move on, and he's going to have a great career. And I'm really excited to see what Coach Brzeski and the Knights will put on the field this fall, because I think it's going to be a good thing.
You mentioned that one of the goals is making the playoffs and getting to a championship, but we know that Norwin's going to be involved in a championship in some regard for football, because it is the host of the 5A football championships the past couple of years. I think that is a significant accomplishment for the district, but it creates a lot of extra work for you in particular in the entire athletic department. Kind of take me through what goes into your responsibilities, the Norwin responsibilities for making that all come to fruition.
We've had a blast the last couple of years having the opportunity to host that 5A championship. And last year we were able to host, 2 in one day. We did the 2A and the 5A on the same day. And that was just a lot of fun. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be involved in that. I think it was the first time that a high school has hosted a championship game, and I think it was 20 plus years, 30 plus years maybe. So I know those opportunities don't come along very often. It's a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun, and we recognize that we're not Heinz Field, and every football player in the WPIAL starts off their season with hopes of playing at Heinz Field, and we recognize that we're not that. But our goal was always just to make it the best experience we could for the students and the coaches and the fans. And I hope that we did that. I don't know if we'll have that opportunity moving forward or not. Right now at this point, we're still waiting. The PIAA is going to outline, championship events and timelines, and then we'll kind of work through that with the WPIAL, obviously, to find out, what dates championships will be played and what classifications, and then what facilities would be available, and they always do a great job with that. Tim O'Malley and Amy Schuneman, and they do an awesome job at piecing all that together. So I'm not sure what the championships will hold for football moving forward, but I can tell you it was a blast and an honor to be able to do that the last couple of years.
Brandon, I think maybe some people would be interested to know what Norwin has to do, or what a high school has to do, to host not only one but 2 WPIAL championship games like you guys did last year. Can you kind of take us through what you had to do to get ready? And it's not only the games, certainly. There's a lot more that goes into it, isn't it?
Yeah, there is, and it's a little bit different than a regular Friday night event. I think one of the biggest things is the logistics leading up to it, the amount of media that needs to be accommodated, especially when you're hosting a couple of games, traffic flow and parking, and just being able to accommodate the needs of the schools that are coming in. But I think one of the biggest changes too is those games are obviously televised, and so that adds a little bit of a wrinkle to maybe what a normal Friday night might bring. When you're working with the folks from the CW or whoever may be coming in to broadcast that, and they've been great. That was a great learning experience for me to get to see some of the behind the scenes production that goes into those events and be able to work with them and do that. So I think it's just a lot of logistical details that you want to work out leading up to the event. And then, I've said this before, but we're so fortunate with the crew that we have here that work those games, from ticket staff to security and whatever else may be entailed, that's what makes the event go so smooth and makes it fun to operate. So, but yeah, just a lot of moving parts that go into that, and it was a lot of fun.
We're talking to Brandon Rapp, 7th-year athletic director at Norwin, as part of the Quarantine Q&A here on the Westmoreland Sports Network. We talk about football and hosting the championships. There was a lot of debate over the last handful of months about the future of WPIAL football and what might be the best route to go. Is it maintaining the classifications and having the conferences made up of all teams in the same size, or is it better geographically? Ultimately, they pretty much went with the status quo, made some changes in terms of the non-conference schedule, things of that nature. Did you have a strong opinion one way or the other when this discussion ensued, and what do you think of what ultimately was settled upon?
I think we're certainly happy with the end result. Selfishly, we're going to have the opportunity to keep a scrimmage with Franklin Regional and continue contests with Penn Trafford, and then some new opponents in Latrobe and Collinsville as well. So we're gonna start out between our scrimmage and our first few exhibition games where we're going to be able to have a nice local flavor before we get into that 6A schedule. What I really had hoped for going into it, I think we were in a unique situation in 6A with only having enough teams for one section. We kind of knew what our section was going to be. The 6A was really kind of established just because there's not enough teams for more than one section. So all those moving parts of were the sections going to be made up of geographical opponents, or was it going to be more competitive based? Whatever the case might be, that really didn't impact us as much at the 6A level as maybe it did some of the other classifications, because again, we knew who we were going to play in our section. Our section event, I think maybe a little bit more than maybe some others. So with that being said, we're happy to have a nice local flavor to start off the year. And I think that'll bring back, some interest in some of the local communities. And then, then we'll get heavy into our 6A schedule from there, and we'll look to do our best.
How do you think it would have worked out if they had gone with the geographic proposal where you were in a conference with not only Hempfield area, but teams like Franklin Regional and Penn Trafford, and maybe even a Greensburg-Salem, which is a couple of classifications lower, Greater Latrobe as well in that discussion? Do you think that that's something that would have worked not only for the teams but for the communities?
I do. I thought both proposals would have worked out okay. Certainly, logistically, there would have been some things that would have had to work out had they gone the other direction. Would it have been a PowerPoint system? How do you determine who qualifies for the postseason? Certainly would have made it interesting. There's no doubt, and it really would have been a change in the landscape of what everybody in the WPIAL is used to as far as regular season schedule and qualifying for the postseason. So again, I think either way, they probably could not have gone wrong. I guess in our opinion, as far as Norwin is concerned, we felt like we were going to be able to, end up with some local flavor on our schedule regardless. And as it worked out, that's the case. So we're happy.
Brandon, let's transition away from football for a moment and talk a little bit of wrestling with you. It seems like sports have been gone forever, but it wasn't that long ago, just a few weeks back, that Curtis Phipps was celebrating Norwin's first ever state wrestling champ. Kind of talk about what went through your mind when Kurt finally was able to climb to the top of the mountain there. And I thought it was really interesting. We had Coach Vince Augustine and Curtis on our On the Mat podcast a few weeks back, which was great. We had some great interviews on that. If you want to go back and listen, it's on our website. But he talked about how much pressure he had on him because it was his senior year. He had come up just short a couple of times, and obviously it meant something to him to become Norwin's first ever state champ, but he hadn't done it yet. And he had talked about how much pressure was on him and how much he had thought of that even before he was going out for his finals match. But he won. He got the gold medal, and I know how proud that you were, how proud that Coach Augustine was, and really the entire Norwin community came together, and we're so proud of Curtis. But just your thoughts through the whole process and being able to see him with that gold medal.
Yeah, I think proud is the right word. You hit on that. Just proud to see him reach his goals, but also just proud for the entire program, the Norwin wrestling program. 84 years and nobody's had a championship, and just like you had mentioned, the pressure that I think Curtis felt, to see that state championship finally come back to Norwin. that was maybe the first time I've ever really seen. I don't want to say that Curtis was nervous, but just the pressure, and it wasn't the pressure for him to succeed. It was, this program needs a state champion, and it was such an awesome weekend and such an awesome end to the season. We had so many qualifiers for the WPIAL championship, and to see those kids do well, and then we had 3 qualifiers for the state tournament, and Johnny Altieri and Chase Kranitz both wrestled great all weekend. So it was for Norwin wrestling that weekend to see those 3 kids do well. We're following on our phones and watching Curtis's older brother Drew do great and upset a number 1 seed in his conference championship. So it was just so cool from a wrestling standpoint for Norwin wrestling that whole weekend. And then it was just that pressure at the end that is this going to culminate in a state championship? And it did. And so I just relieved, proud, honored to be a part of it and get to see it. It was just so cool. And I don't know how much Curtis shared, but to see the community support around that, the gathering that was here on Sunday afternoon when he came back, and just to see that community support, messages from former wrestlers and how they were all following that. And it was a great win for Curtis, and it couldn't have happened to a better kid. The kid works his tail off. He's great academically. So with all those things being said, it couldn't have been better. But it was also just a great win for the school district and the program as well.
Yeah, the Norwin wrestling program certainly on the way up. And yeah, one of the things that Kurt mentioned on our podcast was, or maybe Vince actually talked about this, and then Curtis got an opportunity to comment on it. But shortly before Curtis was going out for his finals match, he said to Coach Augustine, he said, I'm nervous. And Vince said, well, that's normal. You're wrestling in a state championship. That's normal. And he said, well, I don't want to let anyone down. And Coach Augustine said, at that point, we're maybe not in the best, mental, we need to do something to kind of get out of this stance here. And he said, let's just focus on scoring points. Focus on scoring points. And that's what he did. And he won the state championship. I thought that was very revealing. That Kurt said that when we talked with him that he was going through things like that. But as a wrestler, it really impresses me the mental aspect of it, how mentally tough you have to be a wrestler. Because when you're in those duel matches, Brandon, you're trying to certainly win matches and score points for your team. But when you're in these individual tournaments, it's all about you. That's it. You and your coaching staff. And for him to be able to have that much mental toughness with all that pressure on him, especially after he conceded that, hey, I was really nervous about letting people down, and I thought about that right before I went out on the mat, and for him to be able to do it, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was, and I think for me personally, I've seen some of the struggles that Curtis has had to endure over the course of his career, and that's what spoke volumes to me. The amount of pressure that he was feeling for the program. If you think back to his junior year, he went out and wrestled in a championship match, and he wasn't 100%, and he just battled through it, and it just didn't. I thought after that, that the way he gutted that out, I really thought that I don't know if there's anything that can mentally, shake this kid. He might be one of the mentally toughest kids I've ever seen to go through that junior year state championship match. And then to fast forward to this year for that to affect him a little bit, and he was still able to fight through that, but it spoke volumes in just the amount of pressure that he was feeling to succeed for the program. So, yeah, it was incredible.
That certainly was a high point for the winter season for Norwin. But there was some good basketball being played for the Knights as well in the winter. And I want to talk both boys and girls, but we'll focus on the boys' side to begin. Pretty headline-grabbing hire with Buddy Vilensky coming by way of Alderdice. It was his first year, and I think that he has the program trending in the right direction. What did you see from him in particular and the team overall that has you optimistic?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure to have Coach Vilensky on staff. He has been great to work with, and he is all in in seeing Norwin boys basketball succeed, and the time and effort and dedication. I thought that there was tremendous improvement throughout the year with that program, and the kids really worked hard, and fell a little bit short when it came down to making the postseason. But it was a crazy section this year, and from night to night you just didn't know who was going to come out on top in that section, and that was a lot of fun in its own right. So and I was proud that Coach came in, and the team was competitive night in and night out, and it was really a lot of fun to watch. And so we're optimistic with moving forward. He really does things the right way, and just works his tail off, and the kids are receptive to that. And so it's been a lot of fun to watch that program continue to grow, and again, very optimistic for next year. We want to see what our section looks like. That's another one that has not been released yet, so we'll see what changes may be coming with that. But Coach does a great job, and we're really happy to have him in the blue and gold for sure.
When recently we tried to come up with some new ideas for content without having the live sports broadcasts for the spring, this quarantine Q&A was one of the ideas. Another one that we came up with that we have on our website right now, westmorelandsports.com, is the top sports teams in Westmoreland County high school sports over the 10 years that we've covered high school athletics. And the first team that we profiled was the 2015-16 WPIAL Championship girls basketball team. What a terrific program that was. It looked as though for a while that maybe this year's version could be headed to another championship game. Ultimately, it didn't happen. Great regular season, and I think maybe the final week of that regular season and the opening round playoff defeat, albeit in a much smaller and more competitive bracket in that classification, maybe raised some eyebrows. What did you see in terms of evaluating the girls basketball season from start to finish?
Again, very similar. Always high expectations. I know for those young ladies and the coaches that the season may not have ended how they wanted, but that's not from a lack of effort. It's not from a lack of preparation. Incredibly proud of the effort that they put in. You compared. You talked about the 15 and 16 teams, and they were fortunate enough to win the WPIAL back-to-back. And I think what you mentioned a smaller bracket this year with that program, and I think that's what's so unique. I think when we look back to 6A is just how every couple of years the section alignments and maybe just the landscape of what your postseason may look like, not only in basketball but any sport. That maybe is one of the biggest takeaways that I've had from the transition from 4A to 6A is just how much different things can look from year to year or scheduling cycle to scheduling cycle. So. They were still in the top 8. There's no doubt about that, and they just came up a little bit short. But what a tremendous group of girls, and had a great season, and they have absolutely nothing to hang their head about. And that's a program that I have no doubt will be in the mix year in and year out, and we're excited for what they're going to come back with next year as well.
Sean just mentioned the feature that he actually wrote on our website, Brandon, westmorelandsports.com, about the 2015-16 team that repeated as a WPIAL champion. Thinking back, anything stand out about that team, or maybe even the year before when Norwin won, I believe was the first ever girls WPIAL championship the year before. Anything stand out to you specifically off the top of your head about those two teams?
Well, I think it's you just look at maybe the end result is the same. They ended up with the WPIAL championship, but I think what's always interesting is it's tough to compare them because the path to get there is always so much different. One team can run the table in the regular season and be undefeated, and another team maybe has some struggles along the way, but they end up peaking at the right time and gelling. And I think that's the difficult task that coaches have nowadays too, right? I mean, the end result is you want to be in the WPIAL playoffs, you want to be a champion, but how do you get there? And there's a different plan of attack each and every year because teams are different, dynamics are different, the opponents change, those type of things. So I think that's what's so unique. If I think back to those two championship games, again, at the end of the night, those ladies were hoisting a trophy. But, vividly for myself, was a tale of two different nights. The first year things were just clicking, and they were in control most of that game, and really most of the night there was no doubt that we were probably going to win that first championship. Fast forward a year. For the first three quarters, there was no doubt in my mind. I didn't think there was any chance we were going to walk away with another championship, and then they came back and got hot in the fourth quarter and ultimately was able to force overtime with NA and then won there. So, just the time and the effort that goes into it and just how much different the paths might be to get there and the different forms of adversity that the kids have to overcome. So it's always fun to watch that as it develops.
You kind of highlighted some of the things that you've really enjoyed during your tenure at Norwin. What is your favorite part of this job?
The people, the kids, the coaches.
Dealing with the media.
The media, certainly, there's no doubt about that. But honestly, I mean that to me is what the best part of the job is. So no day is ever the same as the day before. No season is ever the same as the year before. So just getting to watch student athletes and coaches succeed in their time and effort. Getting to watch community rally around a team or an individual. We talked about Curtis and just how uplifting it was on a Sunday afternoon to see folks from the community show up in the parking lot to welcome a student athlete home. That to me is what that's all about. To see those are the memories that you'll make, and that to me is what's awesome, is to see the student athletes and the coaches succeed.
Brandon, what have you been able to do with the wife and kids during the quarantine, and what Netflix show have you watched that you enjoy the most? Or are there multiple Netflix shows?
Well, it may surprise you. I don't know that I've ever watched a Netflix show, ever.
Ever?
Yeah, surprisingly.
I'm in the same boat. Same boat.
No way. All right, I'm gone. Yeah, goodbye.
So, I guess I can't answer you on that one. As far as the wife and kids, I'm pretty sure my wife is ready to throw me out. As you know, we're not home a lot in the evenings and throughout the year. So, she is not used to me being home as much as what I am. And I'm quite sure of anybody, she's ready to have us go back to school and have spring athletes start up, maybe even more so than the athletes. So kids are great. I've worked on a lot of kindergarten and first grade homework over the last couple of weeks. So that's been a lot of fun. Not that there's a silver lining in any of this. You hope that people are healthy and that this passes sooner rather than later. I think we all wish that. I've welcomed the opportunity to spend a little bit more time at home and see the kids, but certainly wouldn't wish this on anybody. And I hope for is speaking to the athletic world more than anything. I just want to see our student athletes and our students be able to get back to school and finish off this school year for sure.
Well, you're lucky your kids are young, because I don't envy those parents that have to teach like algebra, because I know I would be out if that was the case. So at least you're doing kindergarten homework as opposed to like 10th grade.
You're right, but this Common Core math stuff, believe it or not, even at the first grade level,
they start going out algebra and
sure.
oh man, trigonometry. Yeah, I'm done with all that stuff. So.
Final thing for you, Brandon. I know most people involved in sports in the way that we are, you sort of have a void to fill. Have you been watching old sporting events? What have you been doing without really any live sports taking place?
Yeah, that's we've done a little bit of that at home, and that's been a welcomed opportunity. My son's going to be 8, my daughter's going to be 6 here in the next month, so they've had the opportunity to watch some Pirates classics on TV a little bit.
Probably better than the current Pirates product that they would be seeing if games are taking place now. Huh?
That's right. Yeah. So it's been fun. To be honest with you, though, not a lot of athletics, not a lot of sports going on in the Rapp house as far as TV goes. So when the weather's nice, we're outside and we're going to do what we can as far as that goes. But certainly I think we all miss it, and we're ready to be back sooner rather than later.
Brandon, I tell all the athletic directors this, just thank you so much for everything that you do to support the Westmoreland Sports Network. Obviously, you and I have known each other for a long time when you were the athletic director at Derry, and of course my brother's still the head baseball coach there. I guess we can give him a shout-out, I suppose. But I know you guys are still close, and I just want to thank you for all that you have to deal with when we come and broadcast events. We love coming to Norwin, and again, thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate what you guys do. I know I've said that before, and I hope that you guys get that a lot wherever you go. But I truly mean it. There's not another outfit locally that provides what you guys provide to student athletes in Westmoreland County. We are so fortunate. When I talk with colleagues in other parts of the state, other districts, whatever the case might be. The product and the coverage that you guys put out is second to none. And I think sometimes maybe we're a little bit spoiled with that locally. But I appreciate what you guys do for us and how easy you make it on us, and then the exposure you give our student athletes, because it's second to none.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I know Sean and I can't wait to finally put on these headphones at a baseball field, softball field, in a gym, or in a press box, wherever we're going to be next. We just can't wait to get going. So.
Looking forward to it as well. Let's hope it's sooner rather than later.
That's right, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. Again, we appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you in person very soon.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Stay safe.
Thanks, Brandon Rapp, the athletic director at Norwin. That'll wrap up another edition of the Quarantine Q&A. For Dan Flicking or Sean Meyer signing off. We'll catch you again next time right here on the Westmoreland Sports Network.